Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sweet. All right. Okay. How is it going, guys?
Fine.
Going good.
Going good. Not lost just yet. You're gonna get lost soon.
Yeah,
Maybe.
All right. Let's see. Let me just close this up, and let me go back here. Start the party. Okay, let's do that. Share. All right. Okay, so I thought that would be a good idea today to actually do some rendering. So we're going to be, importing the model for the first time into Maya. And but before you do that, we're going to be talking a little bit about proportions when it comes to eyes. That was mentioned before. And although we are not going to be modeling eyes just now, right? Like it's going to take another week, I think, for us to start on eyes, like modeling the iris and all that stuff. I'm going to be talking about the proportions themselves. So in her case here, I mean, like I have the eyes like fairly well positioned in there. So it's kind of like this is sketched, right? But the eyes I'm using are basically like the eyes I gave to you guys with that model. But I believe that I made them a little bit more spread out, very, very slightly. And I kind of like feel that he looks a little bit more like her with the eyes slightly more open like that. But I might be wrong. So we're going to have to double check that. So the first thing we're going to do here, let's look at some reference here. Let's see if I go to, let's see, average height of a human. No. Average, Larry, I think it's like how you spell it, Larry distance. So basically, like they measure the distance between the pupils. You know, it's like for when you're going to get a pair of glasses and things like that, right? So they have to measure the distance between the pupils. And then you can find this number here, which is kind of like an average, right? So for women, it's about 62 millimeters, the distance between the pupils. And then for men, about 64. So we can average, let's say, 63, right? That would be an average between the two genres if you want to create like some kind of, it's like model the eyes just for that. And then if you look at this information, so we already have that, that's 63. And then average size of a human eyeball that we did the other day. So for the human eyeball, it's basically like about 24 millimeters, which is going to be like the average, right? Like it's not like a complete sphere, right? Like it's different. It's kind of like it has a little bit of a difference between the horizontal and the vertical, right? So the horizontal would be a little bit wider than it is tall, right? I think that it has to do with the compression that's happening there as well. I'm not sure what causes it, or if it's just like the muscle structures around it. But the fact is, it's not a complete sphere. But for the purpose of making things simpler, everybody does with a sphere. It's like you see like a sculptor when they're using like an actual eyeball, like a practical eyeball, they're not going to be sculpting something that's slightly, just so slightly, right? It's 0 point something millimeters, So it's like not even like a big difference, right? Like 0.5 millimeters. That's the difference between one and the other one. So for all intents and purposes, we're going to use like a complete sphere. So now we have those two numbers, right? We have 64 millimeters for the distance between the pupils, and we have 24 millimeters for the distance between for the radius of the eyeball, right? And now the last one we're going to do here, average radius of let's see, let's see, iris, like that. Let's say average diameter of a human eyeball in iris. So let's see this one here. This is the first that we found in here. So basically, like between 21 and 25 would be the size of the eye, right? Based on this very broad answer here from this guy, which I don't know if I can trust, but I believe that's the number. It's the ballpark. And then the diameter of the eye is between 10 and 13. If you want to go for something more, it's like a little bit more precise. Let's say, let's see if we can find millimeters. Let's see if it's going to show here the size. Let's see, diameters. does it say? I don't know if it's going to tell me exactly here. But yeah, I can tell you guys that I already looked for that, and then it's basically half of that number. So if you have 24 for the radius of the eyeball, you're gonna have about like 12 for the average radius of the iris itself, right? So now we have those three numbers: 63, and then 24, and then 12. So what I did here, I put together a scene in Maya. Let me open here for you, which is this one here, which I did just that. So I decided to actually measure it and just like add those numbers in there to see what's the distance we have between the eyeballs, right? Because a common misunderstanding is that it's an exact 3 eyeballs distance between the 2 eyeballs, right? So it's just like 1, 2, 3. So people think that that would be like right against each other. And I always model with them like kind of like by eye, right? Like by eye, see what I did there? And the distance would be very similar to the distance that I have here, but I never stopped to actually measure what's the distance in between, you know, it's like because there's this gap. But like I said before, I mean, like when you're doing like your anatomy, you know, it's like drawing books, right? You're gonna look at the distance between the eyes, and it's gonna say like it's 3 eyes, right? So basically like there's 1 eye distance between the 2 eyes. But what they're considering is basically like the corners of the eyes from here all the way to the corner after the carunculum here, right? So that's going to be like, in fact, you're going to have the 3 eyes distancing here, right? So 1 eye between the 2 of them, if you consider that opening, but not the eyeballs themselves. The eyeball is going to be, you're going to have a little gap between them, right? I don't know exactly. Let's measure it just to have an idea because I never measured between them. So I'm going to go to create. And let's go to our measure tools and then distance. And just let's click right here. Between this and this, that's close to 7. Yeah, it's about like 7 millimeters distance between the eyeballs themselves, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? So we have like a total combine of, you know, it's like 14 millimeters more than an eyeball. So let's remove that one. So the measurements I actually translated in here. So you see like this one here, you can see is 24. So 24 is based like the measurement of the eyeball itself. And this one doesn't have the smooth, but I believe if you smooth it, it's gonna get closer. It's pretty close to that. Since it's average, doesn't need to be complete precise, but about 24. And then for the iris, what I have here, it's the 12, right? And then to see what I'm doing here, we can just remove this one altogether. Basically, like I'm measuring from this little, you know, it's like the circle in here, kind of like right at the edge right here. So basically, like that's what you're gonna get, that little blend, right? Like this is not a sharp line. It ends in kind of like a little blend. I'm gonna show you guys how I do the blend. So that's basically the size of the iris itself, right? The pupil is going to vary, of course, depending on the lighting, right? If it's like a very strong light, you're going to get very tiny pupils. If it's a very like low light environment, you're going to have like big pupils, right? So this one is kind of like an average size that I use. So like for most environments, it works fine. So that's how we're going to start. You know, it's like just by having this measurement in here, because now we know the relationship between like the distance between the eyeballs, and we also know what's the size of them, right? So in theory, if I actually put my model in here, and if I make my model fit within those parameters, I should be able to have like a world scale model that should work, you know? So let's see what we can do here. I had something else to show you guys. Oh, the rotation, right? So the rotation here, as you can tell, the eyeball is a little bit rotated. But since everything is frozen here, I don't think I can, I think the last time when I did this, I actually created a little cube. So let's do this again. So cube, and then let's do a cube that's has some subdivisions in here. So let's do like a 2 by 2 like that. And let's just scale it similarly and move around here, since this one has the rotation all outwards. And just to have an idea, actually this one is not even rotated, right? So this one is, I thought I had it like already with the rotation baked, but it's not. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna actually rotate it. So let's start with the number here. Let's see, we don't have any rotation here, like in Y. I'm just gonna try to rotate, and let's say let's do like 2.5 minus 2.5. That would be a good rotation for the eyeball. So I'm gonna do that. So let's do this and try to match what I have in there. Around here, a little bit more. You can make more precise by making this bigger. Basically, like you use minus and plus to actually make your gizmo a little bit bigger. So it's easier to control when it's like smaller numbers like that. So now I have 2.5, right? So let's do the opposite here. Let's go to 2.5. Move this one. Oops. Move this one over. See, reset this to world, and then move this one over here. And let's do the same. So up, and then let's rotate just to get similar. And like I said, like it doesn't need to be like a completely precise thing. Actually, I have like frozen here, so that's good. Gonna be able to do that like that. So let's see if this one's also, oh, it's 2.6, okay, 2.5. You don't need to be completely precise, right? Especially like if you're doing something like a real person you're trying to model. Any number that's close enough should be good because you want to keep that a little bit random, right? But in this case here, I locked it at 2.5. So let me delete this. So now I have a slight rotation between the eyes in there, right? So they're not looking straight. They're looking a little bit more outwards. So let's do this. Let's save the scene first. And then let's bring our model in here. Because when I started this model here, you're going to see something that I did. So if I turn on the model that the one I made available to you guys, you're going to see that there is, let's see, this one here. See, like the face grew a lot, right? Her face grew in relationship to that because I started modeling without paying too much attention. It's not like it grew a lot. It's actually the volume of the head, I believe it grew more, but the position is different as well. But I believe that in relation to his eyes, for example, you see his eyes are much smaller in here. And because I made them a little bit more distant, I believe that first I made the eyes a little bit more spread out. And I think I shouldn't do that. I should stick with what I had before, but then I was changing it to get the likeness. And then I ended up like growing everything just to conform around the eyes, right? So, but it's okay because if we need to rescale this, it should be completely fine too. So let's export the head. So let's do this. It's only 300 and let's see, sketch 3. It's only like a 370,000 polys, right? So it should be completely fine. And then for the teeth, let's export the upper teeth. I always match like the number. So like if I'm exporting a version, I export everything and then keep the same number. And then just for the sake of it, let's export the eyes as well. Because that way you can have a little reference for size so we can actually compare what's going on in there. So let's get the eyes in there. And then let's import everything. So I'm gonna do import, and let's start with the, eyes export with S2 instead of 3. So let's rename that to 3, so I'm not confused. And then sketch, upper 3, okay. So eyes first, let's get this. Already in a different position. So if you press G, it's gonna repeat the last action, so you're gonna be able to import again. So let's do the upper teeth. And then G again, I'm gonna import the sketch itself. Right? So let's see if we can do something here. If I go to my eye, let's see, eye is this one here, right? No, this one. So let's make the eye the parent of all of them. So you can just like click all the objects, click for less, you click the eyes. And you just like press P, so everything is parent of the eyes now. And now I can actually hide those guys. And let's just scale this one. Let's center it. You're gonna move right there. let's see around here. Let's see from the front to top. It's pretty close. Yeah, the size of the eyeballs, they got smaller because, as like I said, I was chasing, right? But the distance that itself, it should be okay. So that means that the eyes in my model, they are supposed to be a little bit bigger, the eyeballs, than they are in there. But I think for your model, it should be okay. It's just that I changed the size of the face and I play with the distance between the eyes. So that's what happened. So let's do this. Let's see what we have here. So for the eyes, let's just unparent this now. And what I changed in here, let's see how much that was. So I reduced the size of the entire head like by a little bit. So like from 1 to 0.961. So that's what I had to do in my specific model. Probably not exactly what you guys are gonna need in there, but that's what I needed here for my model. Because I wanna make sure that I have the eyes in the correct position. And then I like, you know, it's like when the iris is barely touching the bottom. So I'm gonna make a little bit higher as well, the iris, right? So we have that little angle that I mentioned before. So like, you know, it's like there's a little angle in there now. So basically like you're gonna get the eye. It's a little bit too forward. I'm gonna bring the face and the eye and the teeth a little bit forward here because the eyes are popping out too much. And you need a little bit of a thickness, right, for the top eyelids. That I'm gonna have to adjust. Obviously, this part here looks a little too thick now, so I'm gonna have to bring it down. But the bottom one, yeah, you might have. I think I went a little bit too much. Let's go back. There is like measurement for the thickness of the eyelid, and it's very thin. But it all depends. For example, like you get like an older person. And sometimes it gets puffier, and then it's almost like you don't see this little line. It becomes a little bit more round, and so it's kind of hard to see where it starts. You know, it's like to actually measure. But I think it's like 1 millimeter or something like that. And then so here now we have a model that has the eyes apparently in the correct position. If it's not, it's gonna be, you know, it's like gonna need some adjustment, but not by much. I think what I have to do here later. It's to actually get more feeling this area here. You see, like I have the cheeking here, but this area is too deep now. So I'm gonna have to build up some forming here and just bring this line a little bit closer to here because it's like it's too much. You know, it's like the squint is not quite selling it. I'm gonna have to bring the bottom of the squint a little bit forward. But we can do a little test here. So let me save the scene with another name. And let's do a little lighting. So now that we have the model in there, with the model in place, actually, let's save the scene inside of my actual project. So let's go to Jessica scenes. And that's gonna be the first one. So we're gonna be like Jessica portrait 1. And then, so this is the first one you're going to be saving here. Obviously, you guys don't have the eyeballs just yet, so don't worry about that. I can actually just, I can actually eliminate the eyeball, the shaders, so you guys don't need to worry about it. Otherwise, you're going to be freaking out that you need some eyeballs in there. But I can do a little render so you can see what's going on here. Let's see. Let's clean it up. Let's do this one. Just a second. And oh, I have to, you know, I'm gonna adjust the scene here so you guys can see what I'm doing. But I'm just gonna wait until he brings the maps in here. It's kind of locked. Just a second. Just loading everything. Okay, cool. So there's a weirdness happening right there with the eyes because there's the old eyeball intersecting with it, right? So you see like that little ball in there. So I'm gonna have to eliminate it. So let's get this guy, not this one. It's the first one, right? No, actually, let's see, this one. Okay, let's get that one out. So now you got some eyes in there. The shadow is a little bit too strong at the top, right? Because we don't have the distance, you know, it's like in the eyelids adjusted to the eyes just yet. But at least we can see some eyes in there. If I turn it around, let's see, you can catch some highlight maybe. Yeah, a little bit of a highlight. But for the purpose of this, we are not there yet with the eyes, so we're gonna just like transform this whole thing into a clay shader. So the first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna bring that scene that I made available to you guys. So let's start like fresh here. I'm gonna hide what we don't need. So I'm gonna hide all this distance stuff. And let's pretend we're starting with the scene that's completely fresh. I'm gonna even hide this one, which is the HDRI. Make sure I don't have anything else in there, so it's clean. And then let's import that scene. Let's see if I can find it here. Let's see, OBJ, and then my binary. Studio Lighting plus clay shader. So this is the one you guys have available to download, right? So I put this, oh look, she looks like Mickey Mouse now. She's Minnie Mouse. So those guys here, basically, they have the shaders already there, right? So I put like some clay shaders in there for you guys to experiment with, which is kind of like a quick and dirty version of, let's see, duplicate, let me delete this, like delete the duplicate shader networks, just to make sure that everything's clear. But I have those shaders called clay green and NSP, and then clay red NSP. And this is basically, if you look at this guy here, let's see. That's not what I want. Let's go to this one. Let's go to the gallery here. So actually, this one here, this image here in the background, this is rendered with exactly the same shaders. It's just that I have a ton of detail, of course, like breaking the surface, and I have a little bit more of a color correction at the end. But that's exactly the same shader that I made available. So basically, like you look at this guy here, and then this monkey, right? This render here is the same shader. You guys can use it for your clay renders, right? And the same one for the Frankenstein monster as well. So this is the NSP yellow, right? So what we're gonna be doing here, we're just gonna basically like delete those or hide those spheres here. And then as you can see, I already brought the lighting in, right? Like so you get the 3 lights in here, which I have to test. It worked for me before, so I'd be surprised if it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, that now is the time for me to fix and re-upload for you guys. But let's hope everything is working. And so eyeball, let's get, I have another eyeball right in the middle, right? So I'm gonna hide that one. We don't need it. And then I'm gonna just expand this one. I'm gonna make sure that I have the iris, the pupil, and the tear line, everything hidden, and the caruncula as well, tear line, caruncula. And so I'm gonna hide everything. I'm gonna keep just the cornea, and I'm gonna assign the same shader for everything here. So let's get the one you got is the clay green. Let's try it with the green first. I'm gonna assign that one across the board. So now it should give us a nice, you know, it's like a more like clay looking. And then the next thing you're gonna do, if you just like, let's pretend like the way I started here, I just cleaned things up so you can feel like it's a brand new scene, right? So the only thing I did different here was to bring my model, right, from Maya, from ZBrush. I just adjust like the size for the you know eyeballs and then the distance, and then I brought that scene that contains the shader and the lighting. So that's all we have at this point here. So let's click View, and I'm gonna click Select Camera, and now I'm gonna adjust some parameters here for the Maya camera. If you're not familiar with Maya, so basically like by default, the focal length is 35. Which if you're trying to render something like a portrait, right, it's gonna give a result like this, right? It's gonna be completely distorted. So we're gonna be increasing this to, if I wanna render like just a close-up of the face, I would go for 100 here, for example. That would be probably like the better angle, in my opinion, right? You can try 85 if you don't want it like too much like that. So so now we have the camera adjusted. And then now we have just this lighting setup in here that I have to test still. So let's do a little quick test here and see if it works. If it doesn't, I'm gonna have to reassign the HDRIs. Actually seems like it's working. So let's see. Let's render editor. Yeah, this is gonna be great for when you're doing like the portraits and stuff already with the skin. But for a scene like this that we just need a little bit more dramatic shadow so we can actually evaluate the forms a little better, I would say like if you have a studio lighting, I would do like maybe a 45-degree angle, kind of like a Rembrandt light. So let's try to do that manually here first. So I'm gonna just eliminate those lights. Those are the freebies in there for you guys if you want to render with them later. But the way I create them, it's like this. So if you have your scene there, you only have your model now. There are no lights anymore. Everything happens in the Arnold menu. So basically, you're going to click Arnold, and you're going to say Lights, and you're going to start with Area Light. Right? So pretend like that's your first lighting with Arnold here. So with scale, we can actually scale it up, right? So that's your soft box in here. And the way that the scale works is exactly like in real life, right? So if you have like a small source, like a tiny source like that, that's basically like the sun, right? If you have a small source, the shadow is going to be very, very sharp. You're going to have like sharp shadows. The bigger you go with the soft box, the softer the light, right? Because you're going to get more rays going like from all this entire area here hitting the model. And then you're going to have everything pretty much like you're going to have a lot of illumination even around it, right? If you go small like that, the light's probably going to hit just the front and it's going to get completely black in the back of the head. But as you go bigger like that, from this angle here, I can tell that this rays here from the edge are going to hit a little bit of the back of the head as well, right? So all around a little bit under the chin. So you're going to get a lot of light in there. So this is an interesting thing because by default, what Arnold does, it keeps this parameter in here, which is, again, if you're not familiar with Maya, the way you go to the attribute editor is by pressing Control-A. And then when you go Control-A, you're going to go to the attributes of anything you have selected, right? So in this case here, I have the attributes of the lighting, the light itself. So you're going to notice that there's this parameter here, it says normalize, right? And the normalize, it's kind of like it's more like an artistic thing. By that, it means like, for example, like if you have normalize on, it doesn't matter if the light is big or is small. The intensity of the light is going to be the same, but obviously the ray is going to be more spread out. We're still going to get the soft shadow, but the intensity is going to be exactly the same, right? So let's try to do the first render. Let's move it up. So I'm going to move it up just like that, and maybe a little angle towards the bottom like that. So nothing fancy. So that's our first lighting attempt in here. So let's just do a quick render. And as you can tell here, I'm not seeing anything, right? So in order to see something here, if you have normalize, another thing you're going to do here, you're going to just switch my preferences. So this little button here, you see that with the little gear, that's where you go to the Maya Arnold preferences, like render preferences, right? So let's do a couple of things in here since we are just opening the scene. So let's adjust our render settings first. So let's move this around. So the first thing you're gonna have to do here, you see, I showed you guys before, you had to set up your scene, right? Like your project with Maya before you can do anything. So as you can tell, this is already set up to the old model from last month. So I'm gonna have to set it up to this environment here. So since I already created the environment, as you remember, I went to project window here and it created all those subfolders for me inside of the folder. So I know everything is created, so I don't need to do this again. All I need to do now is to go to set project and then point to the new one. So I can just say this is gonna be Jessica and then just say set. So now you saw it switched this to Jessica images, right? Setting up the project is very important, like certain things, for example, XGen, sometimes it gets in trouble. Like I believe, not sometimes, I believe every time it gets in trouble if you don't have that set up. I think interactive should be fine, but if you're using the core, I think you're still gonna get some trouble. So I'm gonna just name here, I'm gonna say Jess A, and I keep the name like A, B, C, you do whatever you need. And then the image format for my renders, I always use EXR, because 32 bits, you know, it's like you get more control if you're color correcting and things like that. And then this tab here, by default, it says single frame. So I normally switch straight away to number and then extension. So the name, so it's going to be Jessica. There's an example in there. Then 0001 EXR, so that's going to be the naming. And then I have like I keep this one default, so start and end frame. And I do this way because instead of like having to render one by one my scenes, what I normally do, I create keyframes for the camera angles. And then overnight, I normally crank, I just like tell Maya to just render overnight the whole sequence, so that the 10 frames, and I get all the renders in the morning. So that's why I'm doing this way. Like I have the extension in there so they don't override each other, right? For the size, normally I use like 900, but sometimes I go all the way to like 1200 by 1200. But 900 is decent, you know, it's like to get the stuff on Instagram, for example. That's normally what I do. And that's basically it for this tab here. So let's see if I covered the whole thing. So, and you have the visual reference as well. You can always pause the video later. But yeah, that's about it. And then for the Arnold rendered, so this is one that by default, everything is like, I believe is 1 in here. I normally use 3 for everything. Sometimes I might be a little overkill, but the thing is like, if I want to get like somehow a noise-free render, 3 I think it would be the minimum. You know, it's like even at 3 with 6 for this one, for the camera anti-alias, is still a little bit noisy, you know, but at least you get a little bit more of the form. This stuff is very important, you know, because obviously it's going to increase the render times and everything. The more you crank those numbers, right? So for example, like if I go from 333, you see the maximum amount of rays in here would be 387. But if I go to 4, 688, 1075, 1500, right? It's going to keep going. If it's a final render, for example, if it's a final render, let's see, at 1200 by 1200, I'm normally going to render something around 10 here, right? You can go as far as you want, of course. But if you're rendering something like with a very large resolution, because you have so much resolution, you don't need to crank this too much. So sometimes if it's a large render, you can just do it like with 8. You can get away maybe with 7, but I would say 8. And then 333 basically for everything. And this is basically the multipliers, right? Like if you need, like if your SSS, like your subsurface is a little noisy, you can crank this one, maybe one more, you know. If the specular is not good enough, you can crank this one a little more. But the interesting thing is that if you're dealing with stuff that's very high frequency, like the detail we're going to be sculpting for the face is going to be super high detail. It's very deceiving if you have like low samples in here. Because what happens is that sometimes you're rendering and you think that okay, the highlights look very diffuse and that's what I want. So you basically you keep the way it is. You know, it's like kind of like, okay, you have a little bit diffuse, so the highlights are not super sharp, not too glassy, right? So you want it to be a little bit more diffuse. So sometimes like you render with a lower resolution, you get that effect, and it was like, huh, I like that, so that means it's good. But then later, when you're going to do your final renders and you crank the anti-alias in here, you're going to notice that everything's going to change quite a lot. Going from 6 to 10, for example, everything's going to get more shiny because you have more samples. And then you're going to realize that the diffuse effect you're getting was, in fact, noise that was, you know, was like baked into the specular. So that's why it's important to actually render things with a little bit more resolution when you get later on with the textures and the, you know, it's like with the specular maps and everything plugged. Otherwise, it's going to be very deceiving. If you try to do it just to save time with 6, then you're not going to get a fair result, you know. So even if you do like a small sample, like just a little window like the cheeks in here to see if it's rendering correct, and do that with like 8, for example, you're going to get a more precise, you know, it's like evaluation of the specular by doing that. But for our testing here, since we don't have high frequency stuff, we can get away with like 6. So, and then for adaptive sampling, I'm not using it, but this is basically like it's kind of useful, you know, because you can actually say the maximum amount that it's going to go to. So you can just say like here, like, okay, going to start at 2, right? and then it's going to end at 8. So basically like between 172 and 227.52. So it's going to be variable. I normally don't use it, but I mean, like it might be useful for you guys to do that way. And then filter. There's like lots of different filters in here you can use. Some of them produce like sharper results. But even in the Arnold documentation, they say like sometimes it's just good to keep like the default, like Gaussian, and then just play with the width. So I think it starts at 2 in here. So the lower you get, the sharper you get the results. So I go a little bit less than that, so 1.5. I used to go like 1.2, but then there's something that actually fights the skin feel. That's like if you go super sharp with it, almost like that beautiful glow that you get from the subsurface scattering, it kind of like becomes a little bit more rock kind of looking if it's too sharp. So that's why I go lower, but not like all the way down to 1 or 1.2 anymore, because I want to keep that little, you know, it's like glowy kind of effect that the skin has. This is an interesting one here. Use auto bump in SSS. I'm going to show you what auto bump in SSS is. So, for example, if I have a displacement map, we're going to be dealing with this next week when we assign the displacement map. We're going to be doing renders with displacement. But if I click the model itself here, just for you guys to keep this on your radar, we're going to do this again next week. I press Control-A, so I have the attribute editor here, right? So not the first step, this one here where you have like the transformations, but the second one, you have like the render stuff. So if you go to Arnold and expand that, you have a bunch of parameters here. This first one here, the opaque, it's basically like the default, like every single object is opaque until you say it's not. So basically like if you have a model that's transparent, like you're making glass or something like that, you have to turn it off because otherwise your shadow is going to be solid. You know, it's like if you want like a transparent shadows, then you're going to have to turn it off. But in this case here, we don't have that problem because it's a solid object, so we're going to keep opaque. Everything's going to be default in here until I get to SSS set name. So this one here is the first thing you're gonna do when it comes to all the objects you bring to your scene. So for each one of them, you're gonna do the same. You're gonna put a name that's common for all of them. So for example, for teeth, eyes, iris, and anything that has subsurface in it, you're gonna put the same attribute. So in my case, I use this name here that's called shared SSS, right? And then for every single object, I'm gonna click, for example, this one here, I'm gonna do the same, shared SSS, let's copy it. And then for the eyes, what happened there? Oh, the eyes already have that because I brought from the other scene. Okay, so shared SSS and then share SSS. So I'm gonna keep going here, and then under subdivision here, when we have the displacement maps apply next week, what's gonna happen here? You're gonna have to tell Arnold to subdivide at render time. So you're gonna be clicking Catmull Clark. And then probably like, I would say like between 3 and 4 iterations to get the HD geometry stuff, like to break the silhouette really good. So like 3 for now. And then I'm gonna switch to object in adaptive space. And then for the UV smoothing, because everything exports from ZBrush is linear. So I have 0 smoothing in my UVs to prevent like, you know, it's like having micro, you know, it's like seams and things like that. So I keep it like that. And then under displacement attributes here, this is the fun stuff. You have this auto bumping here. So basically like this attribute here talks to this attribute here, right? So what happens is that Arnold is very smart like that. You know, it's like if you crank, for example, the iterations here to 3, that means that the object itself is going to be subdivided 3 times at render time. But let's say if we're using HD geometry, there's a lot of information after those levels, right? If you only subdivide 3 times, you're not going to get 100 million polygons that we need to represent the detail. So what Arnold does, he basically shifts everything that's more than that. So if there's a difference between the detail at that iteration number 3, it's going to shift all this stuff and it's going to turn into bump at render time. It's not going to create a node with the bump or anything. It just creates everything at render time. And then, so there is a difference and it's very subtle. But if you have the auto bump in SSS off, what Arnold's gonna try to do is gonna try to calculate the subsurface scattering in relation to this number here, number of iterations only. So if you have like super fine detail and stuff like that, the subsurface scattering is not going to go inside of those micro wrinkles. It's going to stop at this iteration right here. Now, if you turn on the auto bump, that means that it's going to go all the way and try to capture everything that's seen in the scene, right? So like all the bumps and stuff, everything's going to be scattering, right? In this case here, now that I already show you guys all this stuff, I'm going to turn it off, right? Because we're not going to subdivide this model at this point. It's going to turn off the Catmull Clark. I'll put known here. And so no auto bump. And then the only thing you can keep is this shared SSS. Going to turn off this one for now too. And then for ray depth in here, it's basically like how many bounces you're going to have. For example, like if you have a transparent object, you're going to have to use, for example, transmission, right? That's the transparency. You're going to have enough bounces to reveal the surfaces that are underneath something else, right? So let's say if you have like the sclera itself, which is a lens, right? And you have like the front side and you have the back side. Those are like basically like two rays already, right? Like two depths that you have in there. But then let's say if you have like a kind of like a spherical object inside of the sclera in there to produce an effect of a lens or something like that. And then basically like if it's a kind of like a squashed sphere in there, just to create this little lens, it's going to be another two faces you're going to have to pass through, right? So we're going to have to increase another 2 ones. So we're at 4. But then if you have some, you know, it's like, it's basically like it's how many times you're going to have to pass different surfaces, considering like the front and the back. So, but the Arnold is smart enough to actually detect that's going overboard. So if you add something like, you know, it's like I have a total of 10 in here. This could be even like, I think transmission, I don't need 8. But if you keep it this way, it's not going to hurt at all. You know, it's like transparency depth as well. And transmission have to kind of talk to each other. You can just keep 8 and 8 here. And let's see, subdivision. That's the number maximum of subdivision. It's not going to reach that at all, right? But if you want to, you know, put 16 or something like that, it's fine too. It's not going to affect anything. Then for the system, let's go to this. Oh, my camera here, going to go back to 6, right? And then on the system, then under system in here, the only thing that I normally change is like the size of the buckets. They start with 64, and then I normally bring them down to 16. And bucket is basically like, you see those, you know, those little squares when you render something. That means like each thread of your computer or each CPU or core or whatever you want to call, they actually render one of those little squares at a time, right? In this case here, this machine has 16 cores, so it's like 32 threads. So that means that I can get like 32 little squares rendering at the same time. So if I have like at 64, which is the default, it's going to take a while for each one to actually show me something, the result of the render, right? But if I go very tiny like that, that means that it's a bunch of tiny little ants working together. So they're going to render very fast that little square that's basically like 16 by 16 pixels, right? And move to the next one. Meanwhile, the neighbor is going to be doing the same, and the same like 32 times, you know, it's like at the same time. And then I can see the results faster this way. At least that's how I feel it, you know. So my preference is to actually go all the way to the minimum here. Then there is this thing here that one of my students said that's actually really good to do, the auto detect threads. He said that basically like if you put that -1 here, it's almost like Maya saves a little bit of space for, you know, it's like in RAM. So it's not like Maya is going to be taking over the whole thing. So it kind of like, I think that's what he said. So I normally use auto detect, but you know, if he's right, that's what you're supposed to do. And obviously, if you have like more or less threads, you can just put that number in there manually if you want. So I'm going to keep it -1 for now. And then there's another thing that I forgot to mention here under Arnold rendered, which is this one here under textures. You see there's this auto convert textures to TX. The TX, I believe, is like similar to what the mental ray had. That's kind of like a tiling kind of function. So for example, like if you have a gigantic map that's like 8K, instead of like loading the entire thing into memory, it's going to try to actually tile it. So it loads a tiny little piece at a time at render time. So it's not like, it's not going to consume too much memory that way. in my case here, because I have 96 gigs of RAM, so I normally keep everything off, because one thing that that happens, you see, like even this one used existing textures. One thing that happens is that once you have those ones on, and you are doing multiple iterations, for example, in the same night, like you're painting multiple different versions of the same texture and you want to test, if you have those ones on, Arnold's going to try to reuse them constantly, you know. So even if you bring a brand new texture right now and replace the old ones you had, Arnold's still going to be stuck with the old ones, because it's going to be loaded the existing ones, right? So it doesn't do that automatically. So at every time you're going to have to do something like this, you would have to go to Arnold, and then under flush caches, you would have to basically like flush textures. Or, you know, it's like in my case, I would flush everything every time, because sometimes if you change a lot of the lights in your scene, for example, you have some lights, you load your scene with a set of lights on, but then you hide them and then you unhide another set. Basically, like Arnold sometimes gets lost and doesn't understand that you just switched. So sometimes you have to flush the caches here just to refresh the entire scene. Another way to do that is by going here, and then under the, in Arnold render view, under render, you have this update full scene here. This one is supposed to actually flush the entire cache of lights and models and everything. And obviously, to load this Arnold render view, I forgot to mention, you go to Arnold, and then the second option here is Arnold render view. So that's going to bring this one up. And then let's see what else here. So I turned it off for myself. You guys test if it's loading fine your textures. You know, you keep it off. If it's not, you're having trouble rendering your stuff, you can keep it on. But just remember to flush the, you know, it's like the everything every time you render something. Otherwise, it's going to keep reloading everything to memory every time, reusing whatever it's there. And then system here, I think we are good. Yeah, I'm not using like any render passes, but this is where it is. For example, like if you want to add different passes, you can just like, you know, it's like the Z, right? You just click whatever you want to add and just add in here, right? So you're going to add like those different passes. But I use that kind of like philosophy that I remember like watching, I was Finding Nemo from Pixar, and they said that they try to resolve everything, all the problems within the scene itself, without like a lot of post-processing. So basically, like that's what I try to do too. My post-processing is just a tiny bit of color correction sometimes, or adding an extra blur or something like that, you know, like, but nothing like too crazy about like separating the specular and doing things like that, you know. So I do everything in one single pass. But if you guys want to do multipass, there are plenty of tutorials you can look for multipass stuff, you know. It's very simple actually. And then, so we have our scene set, we have our camera set. Another thing that I mentioned the other day was that in order to make things a little bit less boring, right? Because the camera by default is like this, right? Like it's super straight. There is a bunch of modifiers you can use here. For example, if you click in View and you go to your camera settings first, right? Let's look at this one here first. So camera settings. You see, like I have this little square showing here. That's basically showing the resolution gate. By default, it's no gate like that. So you don't know what area you're rendering, right? Like what's the safe area for rendering. So in order to see that, you turn on the resolution gate, for example, and now I know that this is the border of my rendering here. So I can just like zoom in to take most of that area, right? And then there's a safe action here you can use, right? Like, which is like in this case here, it doesn't matter. We are rendering. And then there's the field chart here, because if you want to play with your composition, right? Like let's say like if you're doing something like that, you want to keep like the iris around the middle part, right? And maybe like the base of the nose, if you're doing something like that, you're going to use the horizontal line. Something like that, like it's good to play with the composition if you have a field chart like that. But there's another tab here, which is if you go to View again, and you go to your camera tools, now you have a bunch of different things here that you normally don't have access, just like by spinning around, right? And my favorite one, it's this roll tool here. So this one here, it basically spins like that, right? Which is really cool. It's just getting dizzy. So I normally play with that because, like I said before, I want to make sure that since my models are completely stiff, right? They are not posed yet. In the future, I'm going to be posing all of them. I try to make my composition a little bit more interesting by giving some movement, you know. So, for example, like even though the model is completely stiff and in the same position, right? Just by turning the camera slightly like that, it makes more interesting, you know, because that it's almost like someone is either like an amateur photographer who is like photographing this person, like kind of like not like locked, like in the vertical position, right? Or the person's actually moving the head, right? It's kind of like turning around or looking that way or this way. It adds to that impression that someone have thoughts, right? If this person here was alive, right? This model was alive, which is my wife. No, but I mean this model here, you have to add some kind of life to it, right? And a couple of things that help is like that little angle that I just added. So like 2.5 rotated outwards. If I need to adjust, maybe rotate a little bit, maybe 2.7, I'm gonna do that, but I'm gonna have to test in the renders. And the other thing is playing with the camera like that, you know? So that way you can add movement without even changing your model or anything like that. So I'm gonna do a render like this. And I'm gonna start by setting a keyframe here. So I'm gonna go to View, select Camera, and press S, like Sam. And then now you saw that there's a little red dot in there, right? So that's my first one. I'm gonna go to frame number 2 now. I can actually make this smaller so I can see what I'm doing here. So let's do 20 frames maximum. And then, so I'm frame number 2 now. So in this frame here, I'm gonna just like roll it again, maybe like kind of like straight like that. And I'm gonna just go to a profile, perhaps like that. Maybe like the full head, the profile. So I'm gonna save S again. And then this one, I'm gonna do like a front, kind of boring like that. Maybe with a tiny little bit of rotation. This side. And I'm gonna save this again. So now I have 3 keyframes, right? So now if I'm about to go to sleep, for example, I can go to my render settings here, and I can just say, okay, start frame, end frame. I'm gonna click 3 here for my end frame. That's all I have, 1, 2, 3. And then in order to render a sequence, Maya, thank God they finally did that. Before it was just that batch render, I hated it. But now they have this thing here. So if you go to rendering in this little tab, and you go to rendering here, you have this one that's called render sequence. So if you click this one, it opens this little interface in here. The only thing you have to be concerned at this point is like if the camera matches the camera you have here. Because sometimes if you have multiple cameras, right? Like if you go to perspective and you say new, you can create a bunch of different cameras here, and they all gonna have a different name. So make sure that the camera you're rendering here matches the camera you want to render. So perspective, that's good to go. So I would just press render sequencing here. I would go to sleep. In the morning, I should have all the renders fine, right? But one thing that happens sometimes, at least with my machine, I don't know about yours, but if I have the Arnold render view up like that, open, sometimes it gets confused and it ends up not rendering anything. So because this system here actually uses Maya's render view instead of Arnold render view. So they kind of compete with each other, you know? So I would just like close this one before I even started that, just to avoid problem. So, you know, something to keep in the back of your head. So yeah, so at this point, we are not gonna do this just yet, right? But we're gonna do a little render here. So I think I have all the settings ready to go. So let's do a render here with just that little light. So let's go back to talking about the light, right? So if I select it, you remember last time we tried to render anything here, it didn't show anything, right? So let's see why that's happening. So calculate a little bit. It takes a little time to just load it to memory. So let's see. Is it doing it? Oh, actually, now it's doing it. Okay, let's see. I can hear when my processors start, like, you know, the fans go up like on my computer here. So now it's rendering. So those are the buckets I was talking about, right? So I have like 32 in there working. So we see I don't have anything showing just yet. So let's crank this intensity here to like 300. Still not much going on in there. So let's try 5,000. Now I can see a little bit of it, right? So that means that this is what's going to happen. Let's try something like 20,000. I see something. Let's go further than this. 35,000. Okay, so I see the rendering there now. But remember what I had here. Let's do something funny here. Let's do a panels perspective and create a new perspective. Because this one I can actually manipulate the light while this angle keeps locked and rendering always at that angle, right? So remember what I said about this parameter here. Let's select the light. Which I said, for example, if you have this one on, which is the normalize, right? This parameter here, it doesn't matter the size of the light. The intensity of the light is going to be the same. So let's try that. So for example, if I go smaller, you see the intensity of the light is exactly the same, but now everything gets sharper because there's just a very tiny source, right? So it gets more diffused now. Basically, like the light is coming with the same intensity, but it's just like coming from multiple angles. So that's why it looks a little bit more dim, but it's actually the same intensity altogether, right? So now let's see what happens if I switch this to off. First, it's gonna be super overexposed because I'm already at 35,000 there, right? So it's gonna be white probably. So let's turn it off. And that's what you get. And then now if I go back here, let's try, I don't know, 20, right? So 20 looks pretty good, but now look what's happens here if I make it smaller. So basically, like now it's more accurate with it's like with the life size source. For example, if you have a window, right? If it's a bigger window, you get more light coming in. You have a smaller pinhole, right? That's gonna get less than that. So I like using this one this way, it's like, although like for soft boxes in a studio, for example, you define how intense you want them to go or not, right? You can just put like 132 of, for example, if you have two soft boxes, you can keep one at 1 full intensity and the other one like 132 or 1/8 of the intensity of the other one, right? But I liked having this control and having the intensity being controlled like that. But it's optional to you guys if you want to do that way, but that's basically the way I do it. So just with those parameters here, at this point, you're already doing your very first render in Arnold if you never did it before. Normally for samples, I go from 1, I turn to 2, just to get a little bit crisper. It's like not too noisy again, trying to avoid the noise. And then there's a bunch of things you can actually do for more like artistic control, right? If you keep scrolling down here, you see, like, for example, like there's the visibility. So by default, that light is actually hidden. So let's turn it around here. For example, like if I go to my, to the perspective, I'm gonna look up like that. And so I can see the light, right? So the light's not visible now. But if I go to this guy here, now I make it visible. So basically, like if you're dealing with a softbox, right? You want to create the effect that the softbox is actually physical and in there, so you can actually play with this. And you can actually play like artistically, right? Like visible just a little bit or not visible at all. You can affect the specular or not. So for example, this one keeps just diffuse on, and the specular you can actually bring it down if you want. Or you can keep just the specular and bring the diffuse down, right? So all those things are awesome controls you have, it's like the subsurface scattering, so eliminating it and then bringing it back, right? Indirect illumination. So those are, cool little parameters in there. So now we have our little lighting here, and then you can play with, it's like, let's make it more interesting. So for example, right here, if you keep like the front, let's try to do, instead of like this top light, let's do like a Rembrandt light, right? So the Rembrandt light is basically like, it's the little triangle that you create on one side of the face, right? So basically, like if I have it front like that, I want a little triangle right under one of the eyes. So to do that, you normally go to a kind of like a 45 degree. So you shift it to the side like that. And then I can just like put in a little angle And then probably like a not perfect 45 here, but like a little bit on that side. I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller as well. Something like that. And then let's zoom in. Let's see what we have. So now I have the little triangle under her eye, right? So that's kind of like a little bit more dramatic lighting. You guys are free to ask questions if you want. I'm gonna keep working on the lighting here, but you're all good to ask.
Hey, Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
I have a question about using the intensity in the lights versus exposure. Is there any? Is it just personal preference in the end, or is there?
I believe it is. Yeah, like for example, like if you want to do more accurate with the physical thing, right? You can use the exposure. And the same way, like you have the exposure control for your camera as well, right? But in my case here, I normally use the intensity for some reason, but I don't use the exposure that much. I don't know. I think it's personal preference, like you said.
Gotcha. Thanks. Appreciate it.
So let's get here. So for example, now I have one light that's basically created this nice little dramatic light that actually a 45-degree light is very important if you want to capture like certain volumes, right? If you have like a front light, the volume is going to go away. And also if you have the source too big, everything's going to get too soft, right? That's the whole intention of a soft box, is actually to make things softer. So it's good if you keep like a little bit on the smaller side. So if I'm going to keep like that, let me just crank the intensity a little bit more here. Let's see, 60. Let's render it. So that's like a, it's like it's semi-sharp shadows, not very sharp, but just enough. So I get the little rumble, little triangle under the eye in there. But now let's say if you want to do a little bit, make it more interesting. So let's just duplicate this light here. Oh, another thing I forgot to say is like, it's like if you are working with the studio lighting, sometimes you want to play with the temperature of the lighting, right? So by default here, you're gonna see that I have the temperature around here. So if you click like use color temperature, so that's like a 6500 Kelvin, right? Which is kind of like a daylight. Sometimes I like to use 7000 instead. That's a little bit not quite blue. It's still like in the white spectrum, but I like it a little bit better than 65. Sometimes even 75, And then as you go higher, for example, 9000, you're gonna get snow, right? Like for example, like if it's a environment with snow, you're probably gonna get like a much bluer. And then if you go lower here, you're gonna go to like 3000. That's basically incandescent light, right? So if you're gonna go for a dramatic scene it looks like lit by candles, right? You're gonna go to something more yellow like that. But to evaluate colors and everything, I keep everything like in the very like white spectrum, right? So 7000 in this case here. Yes.
I have a question about the color space because I noticed that I think you're playing just with the standard sRGB, right? Right now.
Yes, sRGB. Yes.
You never ever try to play with different color spaces, or you have any preference here?
I normally have my own settings, like in my post-processing program that I use. But here within Arnold, I only use sRGB. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For example, like you have access to other things here. For example, you have your gamma. The 2.2 is very close to the sRGB. It's like the sRGB has a little bit more of like a darker shadows. And I think like this one, you get a little bit more spread out. But some of them are pretty cool. I mean, like even this one here, there's one that looks kind of like, yeah, I don't have a lot of color to show. But there is one that looks very much like an Instagram kind of filter. I think it's this tone map here. That's kind of cool. But one thing that I pay attention is this. I'm going to show you guys. So for example, later when you're playing with maps and adding maps to the scene and everything, I try to keep everything that's HDRI or EXR, for example, like the displacements in HDRIs, everything in RAW. So they have to be in RAW format. But then everything that's color, I keep as sRGB. So the way I define this to do automatically for me, so every time you bring a texture, Maya converts it automatically for you to that mode, is by going to the preferences. So you click that little icon in there. And then you're going to see, let's see if I can find it here. So color, let's see, interface. No, let's see if I remember.
Color management, I think.
Oh, color management right here. Yeah. So in this case here, you can add different types of textures. For example, like every time I bring an EXR, I added this filter here that basically like you do like EXR, any type of file, it can actually filter by names, right? And you can just say like assign this color space. So basically like raw. And then for HDRI as well, raw. But then if you go to TX, right? TX is still raw. I thought I had, yeah, by default. Okay, so everything else that's not those guys, by default, it converts to sRGB. So you can play with that, you know, it's like if you're using a different color space. And that's basically like my default. All my monitors are calibrated to sRGB, so that's basically what I use. Yeah. But we are not going to play textures just today, but next week for sure.
Chris, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember when I started like learning 3ds Max,
Mm-hmm.
so they always recommend to like when you do a scene setup, you like add background or something so that the light reflect, or otherwise it's not physically correct. I don't know if that's true or.
Yeah, I mean, like we're going to be doing this next. That's basically like using a dome light. So we're going to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually fake having something here, but obviously it's not going to affect the color or anything, any bounce. But like just like if you want to have a background here, you can play with that. But you know, it's like we're going to be doing this physically with the
dome light.
With the dome light, yeah.
Okay.
This is going to be next. So basically here at this point, we have just a single light, right? And the way that Arnold works is that, you know, it's like if you duplicate this light now with Control D, which is going to be the default, you know, it's like if you're duplicating anything, right? Basically, like it's going to lose the connections for the second copy. So if you're duplicating anything that's Arnold related, it's always better if you do like a duplicate special. So you go to duplicate special, which is Control Shift D instead of Control D. And then you're going to notice here, I'm going to keep world as the default and then duplicate input connections. And then if I do that, now the second copy has all the connections and it should work fine. So let's see, let's bring this one back around here. Just going to create like a little studio lighting here because it's just in case if you guys don't do a lot of lighting. A lot of you guys are very experienced with it, probably much more than I am. But in this case here, I'm kind of like trying to help whoever doesn't have this experience with Arnold so they can actually start doing any type of render. So I'm going to put like a big softbox in there. And let's do a little render here. So now that's too big, right? It's too strong. So let's play with the intensity a little bit. Let's bring this one down to, let's say, 1. And it's just a little bit of a rim light now, right? And then this way you can actually, you know, it's like create like a 3-point light. For example, you can have another one on the side just like as a filler for this, right? But in our case here, we're going to be playing with something else, which is the HDRI, right? So the first thing you guys do, you go to this website here, hdrihaven.com. And those guys do an amazing job. You know, it's like they work with donations. So if you know, if you're using a lot of their stuff, you just donate a couple of bucks, you know, but they are happy either way. I mean, like happier if you donate, but everything is free here, right? So for personal use, I believe, I don't know if it's they have anything like for professional, but for personal use, at least it's all good to go. So they have everything separate in there for you. And they have studio lighting, they have indoor. I like the indoor stuff the best. And I'm gonna tell you a couple of my favorites here. This, I think this, oh, one day ago, I didn't see this one. This looks very interesting. I like this type, that's just like a window because I get like nicer reflections, right? When you get something like that. But some of the maps I like is like this one, Kaylee interior. It has this nice side window. The art studio is pretty cool too. The garage is very cool. Not this one. There's another one that's more like a top light. Let's see. This guy. This garage here is really good because it's kind of like a top light and it's like all like this gigantic source. So it's kind of diffused from the top. And then things like that, you have to experiment with them. You know, it's like I would say like just click a bunch of them, download to your hard drive, and you start playing with them. I'm going to show you how to plug them into Maya because sometimes it's deceiving. You know, it's like you see this environment is completely green in here, but the light itself, the quality of the light coming from the window, it's like a very daylight, it's very white light. So we can get like very nice illumination, but obviously the reflection is going to be on a little bit on the green side, but the light itself is going to be quite white. This one is a great environment. This one here is really cool. The veranda. I think I have one render I did, like this was just an experimentation I did with when I was rendering Stan Winston. And that's basically the environment I did before the beard and all that stuff. So this one here is the veranda. It has this nice, interesting, kind of like a very natural outdoors light. It's kind of like half shade, right? So that's the one here, veranda. But yeah, like just download a bunch of them and then test it. And I'm gonna show you how you plug them in here. Oh, before I do this, let me just show you this. Every time you click in one of them, for example, click that one, it's gonna show you the example of it and then all the resolutions they have. So you see, like they have like very big resolution, 16K. I normally use 4Ks only for my maps. I mean, I don't do like super big renders or anything like that. Probably for architecture, like big prints, probably you're gonna go for something a little bigger. But in my case, I use 4Ks, and that's about it. So let's do this. Let's plug one of them in here. And the way you do it is basically go to Arnold and then Lights, and you're gonna go to Sky Dome. When you click it, you're gonna see there's now this big sphere in here. And then automatically you're gonna see around here the lighting attributes, right? So you have the resolution in there, which are gonna turn to 496, which is basically matching the resolution of my map that I'm gonna be bringing here. And then I'm gonna turn off my normalize, and I'm gonna tweak my samples to 2 in here. So just to prevent a little bit of noise. And I'm gonna click this color, and I'm gonna switch to file. I'm gonna turn this, like the filters, for everything I do, normally I turn the filters off. And then Arnold here, I'm gonna just like switch this auto generate TX textures off as well. Same deal, it's like if it's if you're having trouble with memory and stuff, you might want to convert everything to TX textures. But in my case, I'm not doing it. And I'm just gonna go to image file, and I have a bunch of HDRI saved here. And I'm gonna go straight to the indoor stuff, and then let's say big rooms. So let's try by date. Voucher, maybe not this one. Let's see. The museum. I have a bunch like from different packages and websites. So let's see. Studio lighting, house, kitchen. Oh, veranda. Veranda is here. So let's get that one. That's the same one I just showed you guys in the website. So that's basically the way it looks in 3D, right? So it has like half shade, half, it's like daylight, which is really cool. And then in this case here, first we're gonna just like turn off this one. We're gonna just either like bring the intensity down, or you can just like turn off by clicking illuminate by default. So turn it off, this one here. And and let's see what's the intensity we have. We have 1 as a default. The cool from that website is that out of the box, you should be able to get some good results without much tweaking, It's just a matter of like finding the correct angle that looks nice, It's like, so for example, if I zoom in here, let's spin around the globe, right? So for example, like this a dome here. So I'm gonna click on it, I'm gonna put this one aside, and then I'm gonna go to the first tab in here. So instead of like where you see the attributes and everything for the lighting, you're gonna go to the first one, and this one is the transformation stuff. So I'm gonna normally start with like increments of like between 20 and 30. I'm gonna go like 20. Still not there. Let's like try 45s maybe. Let's see, 45. A little bit more side light. 90. That's a little bit more interesting. Let's see if I go spin all the way around to 130 to 120. Should give me like a little bit more of a backlight in there. So it's a matter of like finding a sweet spot in here. So let's try even with negatives, like a -20 spin to the other side. That's kind of nice. I think it's kind of like the nicest one so far. So it's a matter of like finding it, you know. Obviously you can go to your viewport and just do that manually as well, right? You can actually see the map. I just press 6 and then it should show you the map. Oh, it's not showing it. Interesting. Supposed to. See, this one is showing the map. And then you can do this manually, right? Like you can just press E, just to switch to that. And then from here, you can actually, you know, it's like spin it around like that manually. But in this case here, I actually like the lighting we have. So I'm just gonna switch to this. Let's zoom in. And then nothing stops you from playing with the lighting now and getting some mixed results with the softboxes, right? Because sometimes you get a nice, interesting HDRI that's very good for reflections, for example, but you don't want to have a lot of influence in your render, but just like get the reflections for it, right? So you can always play with the same stuff you had for the area light, you have here for the dome light as well. If you scroll down all the way, you're gonna see you can play like, okay, I don't want it, I don't want to see it, right? I'm gonna do like a black environment here. I still want all the lighting that comes with it, but without showing as environment. So now it's black, but the lighting is the same, right? So you can actually go back and forth with this. And then if you wanted to affect the specular but not affect the diffuse, you can actually play with those values as well. So it's very flexible, you know. But then in this case here, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna reduce the intensity to something like 0.2 only. So it's gonna be kind of dark like that. And then now we're gonna bring the intensity of this guy here back, illuminate by default. And now I start getting like a mix of things, right? So now I have a little bit of a filler light in there, plus the area light that controls like the 45 angle, 45 degree angle lighting itself, right? So I think that's a good starting point if you don't have experience with the lighting, and since you're already modeling some stuff, I mean, like if you never play with Arnold, that's a good opportunity to just do it, and then let's see what else I have to say about this. I had something else. Let me see. Oh, I have to show you another website. Let's just keep rendering the background here. This website here. So you have the HDRI Haven already. I have to actually put in that list that I have in the website. I'm gonna put this one up there. And then you have the SIBL. So basically like archive, like so HDR labs, right? So this website has a bunch of different HDRIs you can download as well for free. And so if you scroll down all the way, you're gonna find there's a bunch of different packages here, right? And one of them has the softboxes and umbrella here, which is very cool. You can actually assign those to a plane, for example, and then make that plane into a light source, and then you can get nice reflections, with umbrella, and looks more like a professional studio lighting. And if you keep scrolling down, there is a couple of different ones in here in this package, Rhode Island School of Design, and I love this Nature Lab. Nature Lab is really cool. So what we're gonna do here, so I'm gonna save this this little scene, like the render. And to save the renders, you just go to View and press Store Snapshot. So it's gonna be storing down here. And I can stop it now. And at any time, you can just go back in there. And then we're gonna load another HDRI. So let's make sure I have my angle here. And so what I can do here, I can actually click the HDRI, I can just like turn it off, eliminate by default. I'm gonna create another one. Either I can create another one, or I can just duplicate special like I did with the rest of the lights. Let's do that instead. So let's go to Edit, Duplicate Special, and then make sure you have Input Connections and World. So that one. So let's go back here. And let's look for it. It should be the last thing. So this is the new dome light. So this one is gonna be veranda. And this one here is going to be Nature Lab. So the Nature Lab, we're going to plug another map here, which I have already. So I'm going to go to here, and it should be under big rooms, I believe. Let's put by name, Nature Lab. So I have the bones, and then I have just Nature Lab, which is the one I want. So I'm going to go the reflection one, 6.5 megabytes. And it looks like this. And the lighting is really cool. The light starts with this angle here. So let's just let me make sure I'm selecting the right one as well. So yeah, Nature Lab. So if I click the first one here, first tab, so I have the rotation at -15. So at 0, it starts with the reflection coming from slightly from the side, from the left side of the face, right? So what I can do here, I can play with it and just like, rotate a little bit more towards the front. And if you want to cheat, for example, get the light a little bit more from the top, you can always do something like this, right? It's not physically accurate, but sometimes you can get some very interesting results if you're mixing with, just for the purpose of getting reflections and things like that, right? So let's just do a render with this one. And actually it's not working because I have this guy's here on and the other one is off. So I'm gonna turn this one off right here. And then I'm gonna turn Nature Lab on. And it's very low intensity as well. So I'm gonna just crank it. Oh, actually, this is the veranda. I just clicked the wrong one, so I'm gonna turn it off again. Let's select the correct one, Nature Lab, and then turn it on. Yeah, so this one is gonna be the same deal. I'm gonna have to find an angle that actually has an interesting, kind of like slightly side light, right? So from here, let's see the intensity a little bit more than that. And then I'm gonna go to the first tab, and spin it around a little bit. Let's go from, start with 0, which is the default. It's kind of nice, but let's try going around it. Let's see, 60, -60. That's more dramatic, much more sideways. See, -35. Yeah, that's nice. So here it's kind of like the window coming from the side, right? So I'm gonna put like maybe 4 for intensity. I think that's the reason I use intensity instead of the exposure, like you asked before, is because like for the dome light you don't have the, oh, actually you have exposure here, right? I got used to using it, I guess. But the exposure is there too. Like I said, from this website here, you don't need to play too much with intensities. Like if you want like the result as it was photographed, at 1, if you get like the right angles and everything, it should look really nice. It's like if you have like a gamma set to 1.8 or 2.2, something around that sRGB, you should get the decent result. But yeah, that's basically like it for like for you guys to start playing with lighting. It's like download a bunch of them, do something like this. It's like duplicate them, and so you can have multiple HDRIs. If something is missing, for example, like if you like the side light here, but then you're not getting enough bounce from the back, you can always add like a different it's like area light and bounce from there. And also there's a bunch of other things you can do. There's how to create like black cards. You can actually block things from block the HDRI from certain angles. But yeah, so this is very important to me. That's why I'm kind of like trying to put you guys already in this track of rendering your stuff kind of straight away. So anything you have, like any model you have in there, because that's basically what I'm going to be using to evaluate the forms, because I'm going to be looking at her likeness, right? So one thing you can try to do is actually try to mimic some lighting you find in the pictures. So for example, this one here is an example, right? This one I use soft boxes in real life, So I would probably like try to mimic the same way, right? So there's a side light in here and a less intensity on this side, and then probably like a bounce card from that side, a little bit more from the back, right? So so I can try to mimic something like that instead of like trying to chase the forms from a totally different, let me just bring this back, a totally different lighting setup, right? So for example, like this, it's gonna be hard for me to actually see what's going on if I don't match the lighting. But if I do like a fairly decent match, I can see, for example, like things like the filtrum in here, how deep it is or not. This is obviously is not going to be the perfect reference because she's not smiling here. And in that case, if she was smiling, the filtrum would be much shallower than this because of the pressure of the gums behind it. Yeah, I think like just start by putting your model in a scene and try to match like slightly the lighting that you have in there. It doesn't need to be exact. And then because it's like as you change the lighting, things you're gonna start seeing like some different forms and things like that. And it's always tricky to chase those things. This case here, for example, she's kind of like in the shade, right? So, and I can see that there's a lot of light coming from below because of the reflection in the sand, right? So there's a lot of lighting coming here. So she's getting like this shadows in here in this area, right? So there's a lot. I mean, like it's very deceiving. For example, like I look between this one and this one, doesn't look at all like the same person. So I have some clues already. For example, like the face and everything. And I'm using a fairly flat lens in here, so that means that she's missing volume on the side of the face. So I'm going to be trying to address that. Angle of the ears, The only way for me to actually see what's going on is to have a render like that. But obviously, like, match the lighting setup. That would be very helpful.
One question, Chris.
Yeah.
In terms of lighting, especially when you're finishing a piece, you prefer always working with just one single HDRI, or you end up always setting up area lights to highlight certain areas or something?
Yeah, I mean, like for this, for the render, I have the latest one I posted, which was this. Let's see, is it here? Yeah. So this last one I posted here. This is exactly the same lighting setup I shared with you guys. This was a manual one, right? So this one has no HDRI. So this is like a very big back area light, and then two side lights. In each one of them is basically like it was a plane, like a polygon plane, and then I just turned into a emissive. It's like so basically like it emits the light, and then I plugged some HDRIs in there, which I already put in the folder for you guys as well. There's an HDR map in there. And this is like I believe it's an umbrella actually. So I'm using like two umbrellas and a back giant softbox for this illumination, But then when you look at, for example, like the Stan Winston one, that one is also kind of manual, but I'm using like a simulation of a flashlight. So basically, like there is a light that's slightly offset from my camera a little bit to the top to create this effect that was basically like someone is like in a party, like and photographed him. So that's why I used my HDRI in the background. I actually underexposed it on purpose, just to give this impression that's actually exposing just what's in the foreground, So it's a combination. For example, like in this case, you're going to get some nice reflections from the HDRI, kind of like it's going to make the reflections more realistic. But you're also going to get this lighting that's basically like just a circular area light that's just create the effect of a flash, So I have no rules. Like every time I post something, is a totally different lighting setup, and the thing is, like I don't have them saved as presets. So it's almost like I start kind of like from scratch most of the time, and it sucks because I should be more organized like that. But I think like it's in the spirit of it's like not creating something that's the same every time. So for example, even those guys here, it has the same background, like the curtain I use over and over again for those guys. I think it's nice. But the lighting, there's always something slightly different, I think this one I started with this one, but I ended up changing and putting more bounce, and there's always something about that. I like experimenting with the lighting, It's just it's fun to me.
And I have like another question. I think one of your Instagram posts, I think with the stand.
Yeah.
I think you were also playing with some kind of mesh light or something, or maybe
With what type of light?
like a mesh light. I think
A mesh
you were,
light, yes.
yeah, I think you like said like you play with a sphere light or something just to create a different effect. Or I just don't recall completely, but I thought it was very interesting. One of your posts,
Yeah,
I remember was one direct light, like one type of light.
let's do something here since we are here. Let's do this. Look, so let's save this one. So I'm gonna save that one, and I'm gonna just I'm gonna set up a project at the Stan Winston one, so we can take a look at what's in there. So Stan Winston, and then that's gonna be my new folder, default folder, and then I'm gonna just open it, and you're gonna see something very broken from the get-go, and I'm gonna explain what's happening. You're gonna see his eyebrows gonna be completely weird. XGen is very good at like crashing, and I was like, we're gonna go through this probably. It's not like a real class if you don't have like XGen freezing your machine or crashing it at some point. So Be Prepared is gonna be very exciting in about 3 weeks from now. It happened both times. But one thing that it does is this, look. Does it look cruel? Yeah, so basically what this is normally when you use the density brush in XGen, and I'm talking about the interactive XGen in here. You know, it's like it looks cool. You save your scene, and then when you reopen it, it looks completely exploded like that. And it's funny because it's easy to fix. You can just go to, for example, Peach Fuzz in here. And if you go, for example, like to my base, and I can just say rebuild. So see the ear in here? Now it's fixed. And now I can go to eyebrows. I can rebuild it, fixed. I can go to the goatee, rebuild it, fixed, right? And then it looks great here. So if I save this file and I reopen it later, it's gonna be exploded again. It's almost like once the corruption's in place, it doesn't fix anymore, you know? It's like it stays like that. So for the lighting here, let's see what I have. So it's very simple. You're gonna see I have this path in here, which let's see the name of the file. It's also from HDRI Haven. If you look for it, it's called Glass Passage 4K. I like it because it's kind of like diffuse lighting, but the intensity itself is very low. So check this out. I'm using just like 0.2 for the intensity. And then here, I'm actually reducing the camera influence, right? So basically, like instead of like using a full intensity, I'm using like 0.422 for whatever reason. I think I did like looking visually, and that number kind of looked okay for me, so I kept like that. But everything else is at 1, like default. But then I have this other little lens, light in here, and this one is actually attached to the camera itself. So for example, like if I have the camera here, see like it follows it, there is a constraint. And then basically like what does that means for me is that, for example, if I have let's see an angle from the top like that, and you're gonna see it moving around. So if I have something like this, I wanna make sure that it follows the camera at all times, so I can get the flash effect at all times, right? And in this case here would be a good idea maybe to switch this to normalize, so I don't have to do what I'm doing here. So for example, this would be the easy solution, but for some reason I tried with a set-driven key, you know, which is a very cool feature in Zebra, in Maya. You can actually link any attribute to any attribute of any object to any object. So in this case here, if I go to intensity and I right-click it, and I say set-driven key. So for example, the flash, like the intensity of it, is actually linked to the Z translate of the perspective camera. So if it goes like closer to him, like not closer to him, right? It's going like more towards Z, basically like the intensity is gonna be reduced. So it's not like super precise. I could actually use different connections at the same time. For example, like link things at the same time. But it's kind of cool because you see like the intensity from this angle here is actually 500, right? But then frame 2, no, frame 3, it's 600. Frame 4, 450, 500. So it basically like changes automatically for you, you know. So as the camera moves around, and the cool thing is that it basically, because it's following it, you're always gonna get the flashlight effect, right? Go to the side. Let's see if I can do. I don't even know how long it's gonna take, but let's Let's get one that's not too time consuming. Maybe this one here. It's a little bit more from distance. And the intensity for that one is basically like, you see like it's around like 6,000 because it's a small light. And also instead of like using the quad for the area light, I'm actually switching to disc. That's why I got the round version of it, just to get the reflection a little bit more round. So it's almost like someone is actually holding a mini dish kind of flash, and then it's getting the flash to reflect that way. So let's see if we do like, let's see what's my resolution here. Oh, right here. So this one resolution is 1,000. So yeah, 1,000 is a little bit much. Let's try a bit less than that. And then I'm rendering at 8, so I'm gonna put 6 in here so you can see it a little bit faster. Let's see if I do a little render of that. But you see, like this, in this case here, the lighting, the main light is actually coming from the flashlight. And the background is just like a filler, so it's actually a 0.2 intensity. And it's even less intense when it comes to how visual it is, right? Because I'm actually reducing the intensity quite a bit because I wanna give it this effect of overexposure, not overexposure, but exposure just right when it comes to the face, and underexposure when it comes to the background. So let's see if I can do a little render. It's been a while since I touched this one, like what, like a month and a half? Yeah, it's like you see, like he's completely boring because he doesn't have any posing or anything like that. And even the face itself still looks a little bit on the caricature kind of side of things, you know. It's like I still have to do a few tweaks to make him a little bit less of a caricature. But yeah, like to me, like likeness is never over, you know. I'm gonna be revisiting all those models at some point. See, it's taking a little bit here because it's reading all those textures into memory. I have like 5 maps. So for example, I have 5 albedo maps and then 5 displacement maps because this is the number of UDIMs I have. And 5, what's that? The color for the beard itself. And then I have the specular map. Oh, since it's rendering the background here, let's do a little exploring in the things that we're gonna be doing next week. So let's see. A little preview here. So let's try to save this. And let's open like my maps so you can see how many maps I have. You're gonna see that it's very, very simple. It's not a lot going on. So let's open Stan because this is the same one that's rendering the background.
Chris, I have a question. I didn't know if I can do it now but you already were showing some carbuncle.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Guys, and I noticed that obviously you have the carbuncle mesh already implemented, but I also noticed that you have the bump on the sculpt. You have already the carbuncle even sculpted. So
yes.
I was not too sure actually if you are leaving the carbuncle as part of the head mesh or you are leaving the carbuncle as a single mesh.
No, the carbuncle is going to be just single mesh. So basically, like what I have in here for the sculpture of her, at some point when I have this a little bit more tweaked to look more like her, then I'm gonna bring the caruncular area, gonna make kind of like a pocket. I'm gonna bring it back a little bit, and I'm gonna make some room to add the additional caruncle on top. And then next week is when we're gonna be talking about the eyes, right? And then when you're talking about the eyes, then I'm gonna be going through all the shaders and how everything's connected, and how I'm creating the transparency so it actually has a perfect blend between the caruncle and the sclera. So all that stuff we're gonna be talking about. So don't even worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
No problem. But yeah, it's definitely a separate object. I think the only thing I'm not going to be covering, like when it comes like to the model itself, is like the teeth, because I mean, like not everybody models with open mouth and things like that. But I'm going to show the topology what I have and how I painted the maps up in the shader networks and everything. I'm just not going to be sculpting any teeth, you know. But the rest, I think we're going to be covering everything. So I'm opening here the scene with Stan Winston, so I can see the maps that are there. You're gonna see how simple they are and how little detailed they are in the most part as well. Other than the albedo, of course, the albedo has to be super detailed. So this is the guy in there, and you can tell that's the HD is off. So that's funny. Oh, right there. Like without the beard is so funny. So, and then basically like if I do a preview of my HD here, so I press A outside, that's gonna render now showing the preview of the HD geometry that I sculpted. And then if I switch this to, let's wait until it finishes. It's gonna renders just a little preview here.
It's kind of funny to see your project now and then in the holding screen on ZBrush. It appears every time.
Let's see. Oh man, it's taking forever. It's because it's rendering in the background. Yeah, my machine is fast, but it's not that fast. This machine, by the way, like I mentioned, is 96 gigs of RAM, has 32 threads, right? 16 cores. You might think that's an expensive machine, but it was super cheap. I paid like $1,050 from eBay used, so it's like it's a refurbished machine. And I swear to myself, like since I bought my previous machine, which was a Precision 490, that lasted me like maybe like 9 years. And basically I was using that machine for everything. And that machine was actually a refurbished as well from Dell. But this one I got from eBay, and the only thing I added was a 1070 GTX graphics card. So I paid another $300. So altogether was like $1,350 for this machine. And I bought it, even paid like in many payments. I think it was like for a year, I was just paying a little bit every month. So that's the machine I have, you know. I don't know if ZBrush decided to crash here, but I'm not sure. It's not common. ZBrush rarely crashes for me, but maybe I'm forcing things a little bit much here. Let's go back to my render, see what's going on. Yeah, so it's like it's pre-advanced already. So see, like just with those two lights, I'm getting all the good stuff in there, you know. So that's basically like coming from that tiny little area light. And then everything else is just like a little bit of a bounce, but then that's about it, you know. So that's a little piece of the render in there. So let's go back to ZBrush and see. Okay, so now this is the preview of the HD geometry you're going to be sculpting starting next week. And then if I show you the albedo color, it's going to look like this. Right? It's if I do the HD geometry here, obviously it's going to be more detail. I hope it doesn't take too long this time, since it's not. Yeah, it's going to be faster now. It was competing with my render. So you see, like for the eyelids, I'm desaturating a little bit, but this is going to go into detail. I have like those tiny micro veins everywhere, right? Which is going to be very subtle in the final render. So I try to go a little bit higher like that. But when it comes to the other maps, the way I normally paint, I just create like a duplicates of the main object. So if I go, for example, I hide this one, and I go to the second object in here, instead of going HD in every single one of them, I just go HD for the albedo color. And then for the other ones, I duplicate the same mesh. And then instead of like adding HD, I just subdivide it until about 4 million polygons. So like 4.4. And each one of those passes I have all saved as separate objects in here. And you're gonna notice that, for example, like this is my specular map, right? And it was like, why is this area here under the eye bags not very specky, right? Because you would expect that to be a little bit specky. It's because the way I do my detail, I use like a micro displacement or micro bump to break up the surface a little bit further, right? And then this map is controlled by this one here, which is hard to see. I can crank my intensity here. Let's go to render, adjustments, and then adjust, let's try gamma. So you can see a little bit better now. So basically like the map here, this is a bump height map that I call it. So the way I modulate how shiny one area is and how more diffuse the area is when it comes to specular is by creating a bump map that actually is either like a texture that can be tiled, or in this case here, when I like my recent work, I'm actually using this cell noise that comes from Arnold, and it was from, I believe, like from Jason Hill. Actually, he gave this tip. He was trying it in a previous class, and then it worked. It was really cool. So I tried it, and it worked very nicely for me. So basically the way it works when you plug your bump map in Maya, you have the map itself, and then you have the height of the bump, which is normally like at 1 by default. So we can actually add another map for the height. So basically what this one does, it controls the height of the bump. So you can see like it's the opposite here, right, of the effect you're gonna get. If you get like, if it's completely black in my map, that means that this area is gonna be completely shiny. So it's not gonna have any bump at all. And then, so for the nose, the bump is gonna be very small as well. For the cheeks, the bump is gonna be very small. And then for those other areas like whitish like that, the bump is gonna be higher. So that means they're gonna have like more micro breakup in between the displacement map, right? Obviously, I could do the opposite here. I could paint like white in here and then black the other areas, do exactly the opposite. And just in Maya, I can just like click invert for the map attributes, and then you just like with invert. But I kind of like, I painted everything like this. I kind of know what I'm doing there. So that's basically why, in this case here, you see, I have a little bit more of this blackish area invading a little bit of the eye bags in there, right? So that means that it's removing a lot of the micro breakup in there, the micro bump. So in this case here, visually, when I was rendering stuff, it was looking too shiny because I already have like less bump in there. So that's why I had to actually visually, okay, let me add pass by pass, right? So I made it a little darker, made a render, it still looked a little bit too shiny. So I made another pass, and then the third one actually went this far with the color until I actually got to a point that it was working for the renders. But it's because those two maps talk together, right? If I could do the opposite effect here as well, I could bring everything to this kind of similar type of brightness to it around there, and then go here and then paint this area a little bit wider, so I get a little bit more of the breakup, right? So it's a combination of both. This one is going to be an important map that we're going to be using. So let's just go back to my adjustments in here. And then for this one here, this is just a second. I'm going to just finish on that. I just give you the word, okay? Just a second. And then this one here, basically, this is the color of the melanin we're going to be talking about later. So for everything that's hair in the face, including the peach fuzz and everything, I'm controlling with the same map. So, you know, some of the hair is going to be a little bit darker, some is going to be more transparent, and then obviously controlling the salt and pepper kind of stuff. Yep.
Chris, I just want to ask you if you think from the displacement here, you think you can extract like a glossiness map or specular from the displacement you create?
I think so, yeah. I think you can always play with that. I mean, like you can bring to Photoshop and play with that, you know. I don't do much of that. Like when I look at the pictures of the skin, like from a close-up, even when it was an area that's a little bit, I would think that it didn't have a lot of specularity. Sometimes the speck is in there. It's just that the surface is broken down into much more like a much smaller parts, you know. It's like, so that's why I kind of like use the bump height to control it. But yeah, I think like you could try to, you know, like to do something similar with that, but it's not going to be precise, right? So I know what you mean, like, because it seems like the bigger forms in here are the one that are a little bit more like black. But I think it's almost like a Z depth in here, I guess. But yeah, there are certain areas you're going to have to actually paint by hand anyway. You know, so for example, the ears in here, I want a little bit shiny inside because of the, you know, waxy, but then a little bit less shiny around those areas. But we're definitely going to be talking about those maps when we start painting them. I don't remember exactly when I start with the maps. I believe next week we're going to be doing. So this week I'm going to finish by tomorrow. Tomorrow is Thursday, right? Yeah. So tomorrow I'm going to be doing the reprojection of this, the current model I have into a decent topology. And it's the kind of thing that is probably going to be much faster if you're using a plugin to like ZWrap or something like that. But I don't have those plugins, so I do everything by hand. So I'm going to be spending a good chunk of time tomorrow doing that. But then next week, we're going to start straight away with a model that's ready for HD. And then a lot of those maps I have in here, because I'm going to be using the same topology, I'm going to be trying to reuse some of those maps for her. So I might actually start with Ray Harryhausen. and then use some of his maps. But then obviously I'm going to be explaining how I'm painting them. So I'm going to be erasing some parts and then repainting and showing you guys what type of brushes I use. But it's mostly like everything is like a spray brush for everything, including the skin. There's a lot of stuff that's just like spray paint, and including like for the beard, and, you know, it's like stubble, things like that. And at the end of the day, you're gonna see like all the parts. Like if you separate each one of them, they're quite simple. It's just a matter of like how much time you want to spend like adding more and more detail to it, and before you abandon it. But then all the parts combined at the end are basically what produced the result, you know. So that's why I start the render so early, because I want to do all those iterations, and everything is a reference, a visual reference, right? I want to make sure that when I look at the image rendered from ZBrush, from Imaya, that, okay, I know that I'm going to need more red in here. So I'm going to go back to ZBrush to add some more red in there. And obviously going to have like a nice calibration for my light. It has to be like a white light, like I mentioned before. So I can actually have a good translation between the things, you know.
Cool. So Michael here has a problem with his mic, and he to ask a question. He said like, which one of the portraits do you think it was the most challenging until now?
The most challenging? That's a good question. All of them are are equally challenging in a way, because none of them are finished yet. You know, it's like I would say like the first one I think was Dick Smith, which was like still unfinished, right? This guy here. But I think it's the most challenging because it was the first one I was actually trying to push it to get some more realistic, you know. And then from him, I think I started Rick Baker from the same topology. So I was able to start with some of the texture as well. So the first version I posted was Rick basically like wearing his skin. So the displacement map was from Dick Smith. And then when Rick Baker saw that, he was like, he really liked it actually. And he reposted, and then he said like, oh, this is a cool render from Chris Costa, just follow him. So I got like thousands of followers after he posted that. But yeah, I believe this one was the most challenging. But from this point all the way to the shaders I use nowadays, I think there's a good evolution when it comes like to the skin, the way that I'm approaching things. And a lot of the stuff I use nowadays are gonna have to re-import into him, you know. So I kind of like try like each project I push a little bit further, and then I try to find the best of everything, and then try to reincorporate, you know. For example, like this one was a cool render. I like the lighting and everything, but in terms of the skin, it could be much more natural, you know. It's still like kind of like in the saturated kind of side of things. The ears is super simple. There's a lot of work needing to be done in here for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But I'm gonna go. Yeah, today I think the only thing I'm going to be doing after the class is going to be a little bit more of sculpting on her likeness, because I'm definitely not happy with it just yet. Just go back to her. And baby, do a little work. But yeah, next week is going to be the fun part, like doing all the HD geometry stuff. Did you guys use HD before? Do you know a little bit of it, or? You're kind of like,
yeah, I did.
You did? Yeah. How you like it?
Have not.
Well, actually, I don't like it when you have to paint like without layers. It's like it's hard.
Oh yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, like the blessing and the curse of the HD is because the HD you don't have access to the layers, right? Like actually you don't have layers inside of the HD mode, but outside you still can use layers. You can use like for the base mesh.
Yeah, but I think isn't like hard to paint colors without layers. Like you want to desaturate, or
yeah,
you have to paint everything again like each time.
Yeah, the layers, like especially when it comes to color painting, it's always a mess. Like ZBrush was never great with the layers, right? There was always this mess. But what I really like about the HD geometry, I think the biggest feature for me is that, for example, like at work we have those meshes that we have, let's say like 30 different UDIMs or like 45 UDIMs in one mesh, right? If you export everything using just the regular subdivision levels, sometimes it takes like a full day to export all the maps. You know, it's like if you have a bunch like that, you're exporting like 8K or something. And then, but if you have everything in HD geometry, for you to have an idea, for example, like for this guy here, I have like 5 maps and every single one is 8K. and I export all of them plus all the albedo colors from ZBrush. So basically, like those are like 10 maps, right? And it takes me about 8 minutes from ZBrush. That's all it takes. So in one night, I can actually do like 3-4 iterations sometimes. You know, it's like before I go to bed, I do a bunch of renders. I test it. If it's not working, I add some more detail. Go get a glass of water when I come back. You know, it's like it's already done for me. So yeah, it's pretty cool, man. That's the part that I love the most. And the fact that you can actually paint the textures in HD as well. So you can get like super fine detail, you know. So, but yeah, definitely not the, it doesn't have the flexibility of layers or anything. But I think the thing that I think about those classes, you know, is like my personal work that's so different from what I do at work is it's actually, I approach more like kind of like trying to pretend that I'm like a traditional artist inside of a 3D program, you know, because when I sculpt with HD, I'm kind of like, okay, what if the detail doesn't work, or if it's a little bit too high or something like that? I was like, well, if it was a digital traditional sculpture, I would have to basically like smooth that area and then sculpt it again, and that's basically what I do. You know, it's like I go, and if I have something that I need to redo completely, I just erase and I do it again. But if it's something I just have to lift some of the detail that's too deep, I can just go like within HD, you still can go up and down in resolution, not all the way down to the subdivision level 0, but the lowest subdivision within HD. And then in that case, I can have like, if the pores went too far in depth, I can just go like maybe like 2 subdivision levels less or lower, and then just smooth it out carefully, you know, and then go back, and I have a little bit more of those pores a little bit more raised, you know. But yeah, it's like I like the approach of feeling like it's kind of like a traditional sculpture, you know. It's kind of definitely.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
So I use HD geometry a lot, and I think it's great. The only problem that I find with it, at least in the production pipeline,
yeah,
is if at some point there's some kind of topology change.
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to re-import your model, or let's say you change something in the UVs and you have to re-import your model. Completely, you lose all that HD data.
No, you don't actually. I mean, like you lose for that specific model, but you can always reproject, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can reproject it. It's just one extra tedious step. That's
yes, yeah. Because like what he's saying is this. Check this out. Like, so we have this model here. Let's say at the end of the day, we're gonna have 100 million polygons just for the head and shoulders, right? But then if someone decided to change the topology, you're gonna have to actually reproject the entire thing. But the thing about ZBrush is that you cannot reproject the 100 million polygons at the same time. And I would say like it's even tricky because I can sculpt in, let's say, like 35 to 40 million polygons at the time for the HD. But if I'm gonna reproject something, what's gonna happen is that if I try to reproject something that's like 20 million polygons to another 20 million polygons piece, sometimes it crashes on me because it runs out of memory or something like that. So I try to keep under 20 million, you know. So in this case here, if I have the entire face in HD, I would have to transfer to another HD model. The way it works is basically like you go HD in one model, then you switch subtool, go HD to the next one, right? So the source and the destination, and then you kind of like you reveal just like that that area you're going to be projecting. For example, just a mask like that. And then if that has like let's say like 35 million polygons in here, it's a little risky to try to project everything at the same time. So I would probably like chop in half at least, and then project this part, move to the next bit, project the next bit, you know, and probably I would need like at least like 4 passes to project the whole thing in here. So it is a pain in the butt. Yeah, come on. If someone changes the topology, you're kind of screwed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to do this many times, man. Not many times, but I would say like I'm using HD at ILM since I think the first Avengers. So that was like 2000 what? I don't even remember, 2007? Something like that.
No, it was,
no.
2012.
12. Yeah, sorry. I'm old. That was 2012. Yeah, so that's been 7 years so far. And then I think I used like ever since, like for every single one of them. Oh, was Pacific Rim before that or was after? I think it was before. Man, I'm so confused. I used in Pacific Rim as well for Otashi when I sculpted it. And yeah, I you know, it's like I have my own thing going on, and sometimes people say like, oh, you know, it's like it's safe to use it. It was like, yeah, it's pretty safe to use if I'm the one doing the tweak, you know? because otherwise someone else is gonna be
if you have to hand it off to somebody else and get a little tricky,
going insane. Yeah, exactly. But that's how I keep my job, man. Just by creating trouble, you know. But yeah, it's definitely like it's sensitive. If you have to change topology, that's no bueno. But in this case here, we're talking about portraits, and then you can get away with murder here, right? So yeah, we're gonna be fine. But
quick question about the HD geometry. Is it supported? Is it supported with the layers? Like, can you sculpt on the layers and have multiple layers, or is it just one pass on the geometry?
It's just one pass, man. I mean,
okay, cool.
Yeah, the layers. I mean, like the layers get very. Even if you manage to make things work, if you get out of the HD, you know, it's like that, especially stuff related to color and everything, it becomes a mess. But with one thing that's cool about it is that this is like Omid, he actually mentioned in the last class, and it was like, yeah, that's true, man. you can do that. Is that if you go to HD, for example, you're inside of HD, you can actually create a morph target inside of HD, and then you can smooth things out. For example, like if you have, like I said before, the pore is too deep, right? So you can actually just create a morph target in there, and then you can smooth the thing out. And then you can go to your morph brush, and then you can just like recover just part of it. And you can have a blend between the super smooth stuff and the super crunchy stuff, you know. So
it's kind of like an eraser, kind of.
Yeah, you can use it as an eraser. Yeah, you can smooth.
Very cool.
Yeah, so at least that you have access to, you know. But like I said, man, just the speed you export the maps, that alone to me is a huge advantage. That's why I don't. And the fact that you're doing everything in one single pass, right? For example, like if you're in production, the way to sculpt like if it's a full body and you're gonna be doing it's like everything with pores and everything, the whole body, you're probably gonna have to split this model into many pieces, right? And then in production, I think what we had in the past was similar. Like you would have to split your model in a bunch of different pieces, and then you would split with a little bit more room. So for example, like if a certain part ended here in the neck, you would actually add an extra 2 rows of polygons, so we could have a buffer. So whoever was painting the textures could actually blend those things, you know, it's like have everything blended. But with HD, I mean, like everything is seamless, and I just like bring the entire mesh, subdivide the entire thing, and go to town with it. The only thing is that I mean, like if you're sculpting just the face here, you're gonna get like I said, like 100 million polygons. In this case here, for my models, is like about like 72 million polygons for head and shoulders. But then if it's a full body, like my Hellboy, for example, the entire body is HD, and I have, I believe, like 250 million polygons to be able to cover the entire thing. And it's all a matter like how you plan your base mesh as well, right? Because if you want to make sure that you have like more detail in the hands and face, that means you're going to have to plan the topology to have more polygons around those areas as well. Like the case of like when I sculpted Kong for Skull Island, I actually did a topology from scratch, and it was like I planned to have like 50% of the entire topology in the head, and then basically like everything else was like a little bit dense around the hands and feet. But then when it comes like to chest and things like that, because we didn't have we have a lot of hair in there. By the way, Gail is here. She is one of our students in this class, and she was actually the groomer for Kong. She did an amazing job, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Gail is here, and yeah, in the background you can see the King Kong toy in there. So that's my little baby in there, and Gail was awesome, man. She did an amazing job with the grooming. It was both her and Ryan. They worked together, like partially, it was like different parts of the body, and then combine everything. They did magic in there.
Do they use like XGen or other tools for the grooming?
I think like the information is pretty public about it, so I don't need to hide it. So it's I think like all custom tools, you know. It's like stuff that Disney developed, and everything is kind of custom. We use the software, which is also public because he got an award a couple of years ago, I think. It's called Xeno. And everything is kind of like it's all in our own pipe, you know. But I mean, like I do a lot of concept art for ILM. So like 3D concept, right? So sometimes I work together with the art department. And then when it's my turn to do stuff, I do my own way. So it's kind of like I become a generalist. And then I use XGen, I use Arnold for rendering, everything totally different from what we use in the pipeline.
Cool. Chris?
Yeah.
How much detail are you gonna add to this model, like wrinkles or something like that stuff?
Yeah, the whole reason I did so many white old men, people gave me shit for a white old man. It's like, why you have to add the word white in the front of it, right? It's like, I hate this stuff, man.
No, but I'm talking to this model after passing to the topology one.
Oh yeah. No, so I'm gonna be adding like probably like the same amount of detail as the other ones. It's just like gonna be more subtle, right? So I was talking about like, it's like I model all those old dudes because first they are my heroes, right? Not because they are white, but because they are awesome. It doesn't matter what color they wear. So I model all those guys because it's so cool, it's like you have access to all those folds within folds and everything. So as an exercise, it's great to show stuff. But also, I think this is very important, like to show subtlety. So I think it's going to be a very important one. And again, like you guys going to have access to the modeling of the old guys in the third week. So you're going to have access to that. But yeah, in terms of detail, I'm not going to be doing less detail. It's just going to be like less crunchy, I suppose, It's going to be like the same amount. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're asking, like the fine detail?
And yeah. But yeah, I was referring to the this like sketchy model before passing to the.
Oh no! At this point here, I could go straight away. Probably like this model, I'm gonna just do a little bit more improvement when it comes to the likeness. Try to get a little bit more of the width of her face a little bit more, a little bit wider according to the reference I'm seeing. But at this point here, I could totally already transfer to my topology. What I'm going to be doing, since my topology already has a little bit of the necking here, so I'm not going to even build that. But I mean, if I had to, I would probably like put a little shoulder in here, right? Or even use this guy as a reference in there. That's a little funny with that. But probably what I'm going to do before I do anything else, I'm going to bring this model back to Maya just to compare to the size of the eyes and everything, and then adjust in Maya, bring it back in here, and then do the projection because I want to make sure that it has that size locked. Yeah, it's going to be projected. It can be from this stage here, it would be ready to project already. Obviously, like the areas around like the corners of the eyes and things like that, I have to be very careful in the way I'm projecting. I'm probably going to be using mostly the base mesh that I'm going to be bringing here. And try to extract the eyelids, like the positioning, everything correctly, so I don't have to worry about those intersections. But then everything else here concerning the bigger forms, I'm gonna try to match to this one. This is gonna be tricky here. For example, this is very thin, but I'm gonna try my best to project it. And then once it's in the topology, I can just smooth it out. So the steps next, I think, is going to be just like projecting this stuff tomorrow to the new topology, and then from that point on, I'm going to keep like sculpting that new topology. So everything is going to be cleaner. The form is going to be cleaner. I'm probably going to be using a lot of that little technique I showed you guys yesterday, which works like magic, right? To do the morph target and just snap things, because I want to make sure that I'm matching the nasolabial fold here correctly. It's like the line of the chin, nose, and especially like the eye openings correctly. So I might have to slide some edges around to do that. But yeah. All right, guys, I think we are done today. So not much to talk about. Like I didn't do much sculpting. I think it was more about lighting today. And but yeah, I'm gonna keep sculpting this one a little bit more to get the likeness maybe a little closer. But like I said, I could do right now just like project and then continue the sculpture with the topology, So thank you guys. I hope you learned a few things today, but I'm not sure because we have a lot of experienced people, in all those classes. So, but if you caught even like a little glimpse of something that you're like, oh, I like that, it's like I'm happy already. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Chris.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
No problem.
Chris.
Oh, I hope you guys are set to at least like start doing some renders. You know, it's like and don't be shy about posting in our forum, like in the Facebook group. I'm trying to be really good about like replying. Sometimes I don't reply in the same day, but next day I reply. You know, so although we are doing reviews every 2 weeks, we still have that forum or that group we can share. You know, it's like, and don't be shy to comment on your colleagues as well. You know, it's like we're all experienced. You know, if you have the time or you feel like it, just like posting in there, we all comment on it. It's gonna be fine.
That's
Right,
right.
guys. Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
Good night.
Chris. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.